The 20th century witnessed the continued evolution and impact of nationalism across Europe. As the continent grappled with the consequences of the First World War, the rise of totalitarian regimes, and the aftermath of the Second World War, nationalism played a central role in shaping the political landscape of Europe during this period, influencing everything from the redrawing of national boundaries to the emergence of new states and the rise of extremist ideologies. The First World War, 1914 to 1918, was a major turning point in the history of nationalism in Europe. The war was fueled by a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and nationalist aspirations. The conflict resulted in the collapse of several major empires, including the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the German Empire. The post-war settlements, particularly the Treaty of Versailles, 1919, redrew the map of Europe and created new states based on nationalist principles. The Treaty of Versailles, which was negotiated and signed in 1919, imposed harsh penalties on Germany and redrew the borders of several European countries. The treaty's provisions reflected the nationalist aspirations of the Allied powers, particularly France and Britain, and aimed to address the demands of various nationalist movements. For example, the treaty led to the creation of new states such as Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, which were designed to unite various ethnic groups under a single political entity. However, the redrawing of borders and the creation of new states did not fully resolve the tensions and conflicts that had contributed to the outbreak of the war. In the wake of the First World War, Europe experienced a period of political and economic instability. The rise of totalitarian regimes, particularly in Germany and Italy, was fueled in part by nationalist sentiments. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist German Workers' Party, Nazi Party, capitalized on nationalist and revanchist feelings to gain power. Hitler's ideology of racial supremacy and territorial expansion was closely linked to his vision of a greater German nation and played a central role in the outbreak of the Second World War, 1939 to 1945. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and the Fascist Party also used nationalist rhetoric to consolidate power and promote their vision of a new Roman Empire. Mussolini's regime sought to revive Italy's imperial past and expand its influence through aggressive foreign policies and military campaigns. The rise of totalitarian regimes in Germany and Italy had a profound impact on Europe and contributed to the devastation of the Second World War. The Second World War was a catastrophic conflict that resulted in the death and displacement of millions of people and left a lasting impact on the political and social landscape of Europe. The war's aftermath saw the redrawing of national boundaries once again, as well as the emergence of new political and ideological currents. The defeat of the Axis powers and the subsequent occupation and division of Germany marked the end of the totalitarian regimes and the beginning of a new era in European history. In the post-war period, Europe faced the challenge of rebuilding and redefining its political and national identities. The rise of the Cold War and the division of Europe into Eastern and Western blocs had a significant impact on nationalist movements and ideologies. In Eastern Europe, nationalist sentiments were often suppressed by communist regimes, which sought to promote internationalism and suppress ethnic and national identities. However, nationalist movements continued to exert influence and eventually played a role in the collapse of communist regimes in the late 1980s and early 1990s. In Western Europe, the post-war period saw the emergence of new forms of nationalism that were often linked to regional and ethnic identities. For example, the rise of regionalist movements in countries such as Spain, Belgium, and the United Kingdom reflected the growing demand for greater autonomy and self-determination among various ethnic and regional groups. The quest for self-determination and regional autonomy was driven by a desire to preserve cultural identities and respond to the perceived inadequacies of centralized political structures. The end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 led to a wave of new nationalist movements and the creation of several new states. The breakup of Yugoslavia, for example, was driven by nationalist aspirations among various ethnic groups, leading to a series of conflicts and the eventual establishment of new states such as Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo. Similarly, the dissolution of the Soviet Union resulted in the emergence of new independent states, including Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, each of which faced its own challenges in defining national identity and building political institutions. The legacy of nationalism in Europe is complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, nationalism has played a crucial role in shaping the political and cultural landscape of the continent, contributing to the creation of new states, the redrawing of borders, and the development of national identities. On the other hand, nationalism has also been associated with conflict, exclusion, and violence. The rise of extremist nationalist movements and the resurgence of xenophobic and exclusionary rhetoric in recent years highlight the ongoing challenges and tensions associated with nationalism. In contemporary Europe, nationalism continues to be a potent force, influencing political debates, shaping public opinion, and impacting the relationship between national and supranational institutions. The European Union, for example, represents an attempt to transcend national boundaries and promote regional integration, but has also faced challenges from nationalist and populist movements that oppose the loss of national sovereignty and seek to reassert national identities. The post-war period also saw significant changes in the political and social fabric of Europe due to the influence of nationalism. The formation of the European Union (EU) was a direct response to the historical conflicts and nationalist tensions that had plagued Europe. The EU sought to foster economic cooperation and political stability among European nations, aiming to create a sense of shared identity and common purpose that transcended national boundaries. The EU's formation was driven by the belief that economic interdependence and political integration could help prevent future conflicts and promote peace. The Maastricht Treaty of 1992 established the European Union, bringing together member states in a framework of economic and political cooperation. The creation of a single market, the introduction of a common currency, the euro, and the development of common policies in areas such as trade, environmental protection, and security were intended to strengthen the bonds between European nations and reduce the influence of nationalist sentiments. However, the EU's efforts to create a unified Europe were met with both support and resistance. On one hand, the EU has been successful in fostering economic growth, political stability, and cooperation among its member states. The elimination of trade barriers, the promotion of regional development, and the establishment of common standards have contributed to the economic prosperity of Europe. On the other hand, the EU has faced criticism from nationalist and populist movements that argue that the supranational organization undermines national sovereignty and cultural identity. The rise of populist and nationalist parties across Europe in recent years reflects growing discontent with the EU and its policies. These movements often emphasize national sovereignty, immigration control, and the protection of cultural heritage. They argue that the EU's policies have led to economic inequality, cultural dilution, and the erosion of national traditions. In some cases, nationalist and populist leaders have called for their countries to leave the EU, as seen in the United Kingdom's Brexit referendum in 2016. The decision of the UK to leave the EU highlighted the ongoing tension between national identity and supranational integration. In addition to the challenges faced by the EU, the legacy of nationalism in Europe is evident in the ongoing struggles for regional autonomy and independence. Regionalist movements in countries such as Spain, Belgium, and the United Kingdom continue to advocate for greater self-governance and recognition of regional identities. In Spain, the Catalan independence movement has sought to establish an independent Catalan state driven by a desire for greater political and economic control. Similarly, in Belgium, the Flemish separatist movement has pushed for greater autonomy for the Flemish-speaking region of Flanders. The impact of nationalism is also visible in the resurgence of ethnic and religious conflicts in various parts of Europe. The breakup of Yugoslavia in the 1990s, driven by nationalist and ethnic tensions, resulted in a series of violent conflicts and the creation of new states. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine, with its roots in regional and national identity issues, underscores the complexities of nationalism in contemporary Europe. The annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 and the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine reflect the enduring challenges of navigating national and ethnic identities in a geopolitically charged environment. The legacy of nationalism is also evident in the rise of far-right and extremist movements that exploit nationalist rhetoric to advance their agendas. These movements often use nationalist symbols, myths, and narratives to mobilize support and promote exclusionary policies. The increase in hate crimes, xenophobia, and anti-immigrant sentiments in various European countries highlights the darker side of nationalism and the potential for it to fuel division and intolerance. Despite these challenges, nationalism also plays a positive role in shaping national identities and promoting cultural heritage. In many European countries, nationalism has been a source of pride and a means of preserving cultural traditions and historical legacies. National holidays, cultural festivals, and historical commemorations help to reinforce a sense of national identity and continuity. In some cases, nationalism has been a driving force behind social and political reforms, as people seek to assert their rights and improve their conditions within the framework of their national identity. The complexities of nationalism in contemporary Europe reflect the diverse and evolving nature of national identities and political affiliations. As Europe continues to grapple with issues of integration, sovereignty, and identity, the lessons of history provide valuable insights into the dynamics of nationalism and its impact on society. The challenge for Europe lies in finding a balance between national identity and supranational cooperation, while addressing the concerns and aspirations of its diverse populations. In conclusion, the rise of nationalism in Europe has been a dynamic and multifaceted process, shaped by historical events, intellectual currents, and social changes. From its early foundations in the medieval and early modern periods to its impact on the 20th and 21st centuries, nationalism has played a central role in shaping the political and cultural landscape of Europe. While nationalism has contributed to the formation of modern states and the expression of national identities, it has also been associated with conflict, exclusion, and the challenges of navigating a diverse and interconnected world. As Europe moves forward, the legacy of nationalism will continue to influence its political and social dynamics. The need to address the concerns of nationalist and regionalist movements, while fostering cooperation and integration, will remain a critical challenge for policymakers and leaders. The evolving nature of nationalism and its impact on European society highlight the importance of understanding and addressing the complexities of national identity and political sovereignty in a rapidly changing world.